Good evening, I'm the Matt Daddy, and this is my post-international challenge team review. This is also the same team that I was playing in my showdown videos a lot. And all in all, I was kind of underwhelmed with how I did, and I was really upset with my own performance because I walked into a whole lot of very obvious traps that really I shouldn't have been caught by. Things that just, were very obvious. I walked into an assist team game one and totally forgot what it could do, looking for the Mons. So in the end, that one was kind of a wash. And all in all, I think I went 18-12, which was pretty bad, but I guess it could have been worse. So this will break down the team that I've been playing while we reach forward into a new one. And it'll talk about some of the major threats that I saw and how players need to move beyond these particular Pokemon, because if you can't have a team that doesn't at least semi-counter these, you're not gonna win half your games. I walked into it all the time, and most of it is RNG dependent. Sometimes you roll the dice and they just don't turn up your way, but for the most part, you really need to have a way to get through these things. So without further ado, let's move on. The first thing on my team is wrong page. First thing up is Thundurus. Now, Thundurus was an interesting choice of mine because I really liked him and I picked him to counter a couple different things. I wanted something that could beat the Smeargle matchup, and I thought that he would do a really good job until I ran into everyone's Talonflames that had Quick Guard, or Minshaw's that had Double Guard in Quick and Wide. That one really threw me for a loop. I hadn't seen a Minshao do that in a long time. So this thing was very underwhelming. It couldn't deal with Groudon at all. Once I got rid of Swagger on it because this one ran HP Ice, I never really needed to throw Ice at anyone because I was the only person that seemed to run things with a lot of Ice weakness. As a result, they were also things that didn't really resist common meta standards. And even getting the Mega Rayquaza bonus only nerfed the Ice and the Rock, which never came. I was always eating Origin Pulses to die. He did survive a long time, but if you can't deal any damage, what good are you? It had a bulky spread, so it was almost all HP and special defense. It's a calm nature, and my total spread was Thunderbolt, Taunt, Hidden Power Ice, and Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave surprisingly very ineffective because with all the power that's going around in this meta, I could never really make use of it because I would get slapped turn 1 because people would protect when I tried to make the easy read, and then the turn after that I was behind in damage output because oftentimes the partner was getting beaten up while I tried to get the Thunder Wave off so I could have some speed control. And it was just, he didn't perform as good as I wanted, so this is definitely one that's going to get pulled from the team. Next up, we have Landorus. Landorus did really good. I'm not going to knock it. He made a couple different things possible that really shouldn't have been. For instance, my Kyogre is 252 attack, or 252 special and speed with a timid nature. So I'm the fastest thing out there, and as such, I'm at least speed tying with other Groudons and other Kyogres, and I'm not quite sure where my speed tiers fall as far as other standard Pokemon, so I think I can deal fairly well with that spread. That does mean, however, that I die to a lot of physical attacks, not so much specials. Like, I even tank Kyogre coverage Thunders, but what I couldn't handle were Dragon Ascents off other Mega Rayquazas. This guy helped a ton because I was able to get the Intimidate off, which meant as long as I was full health, so if I rotated him in and the Dragon Ascent came down, I wouldn't die. And not dying was very crucial given that that was really the only ice play that I had, and I didn't want to keep relying on more and more speed ties. It was just awful. So yeah, I really like him. He was also a 252 spread, but it's a jolly nature, so I'm always outspeeding the most covered legendaries. I even outrace Rayquaza when it's not a Mega, I think. But when it does Mega Evolve, I get beaten by it pretty handily. Choice Band, and I didn't run the Explosion variant like Cybertron. I played just the standard U-turn, Rock Slide, Earthquake, Superpower. It was pretty good. I had to make some more aggressive reads, and this team didn't quite support Earthquake synergy very well, but having a ground type I think is going to be very necessary, or whether it's Groudon, whether it's a Landorus. I'm even going to start trying to make a case for bringing Garchomps back. I'll explain that in a minute. Next up on my roster here, I believe, yeah, Aegislash. Aegislash was also a Pokemon that I thought had a ton of potential going into this, but ultimately left me very lackluster. He didn't do anything I wanted. I brought him on to help with Trick Room matchups, which I saw once they got off successfully, and he was there to try and beat Xerneas. This build is not good at beating Xerneas. I need to have the Gyro Ball variant. I had Flash Cannon on this one because it's an old one that I ran for a really long time that was very successful. It had tons of good stuff going on. And, I mean, what more can be said about him? He's another 252 spread. I ran a lot of those because at this stage in the meta with a low amount of experience and trying to play around anything, there's really no need to try and run anything else. It was HP, Special Attack, and it was King Shield, Substitute, Flash Cannon, Shadow Ball with leftovers. Maybe a weakness policy would be better, but I never really took super effective hits. I died to a lot of Water Spouts, which I didn't think had KO power against me. I thought I'd be able to tank. Turns out you can't. So, that's just another thing that needs to evolve. He might be able to work. A case could be made between him or Ferrothorn. And I want to look into some other steel types that can help with some different matchup issues that I'm having. Kyogre, arguably still very strong, despite Primal Groudon being a thing. And it still does okay in the Xerneas matchup, provided it doesn't miss. I understand now why so many players are opting to go with the Water Spout variant, because I missed all the time with Origin Pulse, and I tried to run Calm Mind on this one in that third slot, which I only used twice. I never really got the opportunity to do it, and even when I did, it never amounted to anything because I would miss. Yeah, the RNG was really brutal in this one to me. I hope someone else felt that pain. It wasn't just me. It made it really difficult when I would lose games solely because my Origin Pulse would whiff and I'd get hit by like a Precipice Blade or something. The one-on-ones, when you would lose to the Groudon, you just feel so salty. But I won't dwell on that because it's not going to get any better. Definitely something I'm going to be keeping moving forward, and I have a different core that I'm going to float around with in the next couple days. So I'll be putting some Hearthstone videos up in the meantime while I continue to develop this core. But yeah, it's a good Pokemon. If you don't run it, you should at least give it a shot on Showdown because it's worth knowing what all it can do. I still stand by the Timid until someone can show me a build that beats something very specific that it has to beat. I don't think it's really anything that needs to be changed. Rayquaza. This Pokemon, I'm really on the fence about. On the one hand, his power is overwhelming, and that's amazing. Having access to extreme speed is amazing when it picks up the KOs on Xernii, I don't know the plural, but being able to Dragon Ascent that turn 1 to really punish the Geomancy play, and then extreme speed to beat the swifter variants was really cool. That's something that I want to keep him on for. As far as the Mega, I think the Mega really helps, and it has strong synergy with Landorus, which, FYI, is the basis for my core, the Ray Ogre, as I like to call it, with a Lando. Those three, I think, pair really well and deal with a lot of major weaknesses, but it needs a steel, it needs a fire, it needs something. Actually, it doesn't need a fire, it needs Probably a bulky grass, but I'll figure that out later. Like a Ferrothorn. Dragon Ascent, Dragon Claw, because the one I have in my cartridge doesn't have a perfect special attack. Extreme Speed and Protect with a jolly 252 spread once again. And this thing just beat the snot out of everything it could when it got the chance. However, when I would run into a lot of Tailwind teams, or when I would just get outsped by a fraction, like I didn't know my speed tiers, I got wrecked by a Mega Salamence in one of the games, and it just, if it steamrolls out of control. I've cleaned games out with it, and it also dies to a lot of things, so it's a big glass cannon. I need some more bulk on the team to try and balance it out. But still, a good Pokemon. It did what I wanted. Kangaskhan, the alternate Mega to try and help me balance out my matchups. While Mega Kangaskhan is still a really good Pokemon, it doesn't support this team quite as well as it does the Xerneas Groudon cores. Because the fake out pressure, while good, I don't have any setups with. And the two that I did in Substitute on the Aegislash and Calm Mind on the Kyogre really didn't get me anywhere or do much of anything. So I don't think it's a strong Mega secondary for this team. I think I could find something better. But it's still a very strong force to be reckoned with. It's not something that you can just kind of ignore and hope that you never face again, because you're going to see it on the ladder all the time. So having a strong counter to it, being it your own Xerneas, Groudon does a pretty good job against it. I like my Landorus against it. Rayquaza, if it's just a physical beast, like physical attack beast, you know, Dragon Ascent, that thing, it gets right out of the way. So the most you have to worry about is the fact that it brings really strong fake out pressure, and if you let it sit, it will deal a lot of damage. Mine was a before I get to that, go back. There it is. Mine was a bulky spread with, it wasn't quite 252, it was like a 240 HP with a little bit of special defense and all attack, so I was still dealing as much damage as I could. I was getting sick of trying to win speed ties when I first made this thing, so I ended up opting for this one because it meant that, you know, hey, I might take a punch, but if I have something that's a bigger threat, maybe they'll gun after that one and I can go through and deal with it. Yeah, pretty good. So, major threats still, and huge things that have cleaned my clock. The standard Japanese thing that I ranted about a couple days ago with the Groudon, the Smeargle, the Xerneas, the Kang, the Amoonguss, and sometimes Mega Salamence, sometimes Cresselia. That last two slots are optional, whatever they think coverage needs to be. But it's really those four core mons. And two more of them I want to talk about again with a more level head than I did the other day. Groudons can be beat by themselves. They're really not as big a threat if you have experience playing Weather Wars. You know, you have to properly predict when's it going to come in, and I only got caught by that once. Otherwise, you know, I knew it was sitting in the back, it was going to wait to come out, and if you play around it and just don't throw a water move, or if you're a Groudon user, drop a fire move when I'm going to play my Kyogre, it's pretty easy to get around. It has massive power and still just does so much as far as making me try to deal with it. So it's definitely something big to deal with, but I think with the Kyogre, and my favorite play when I catch scrubs with it, is leading Rayquaza Kyogre against like a Groudon Crest lead. And in that situation, you Mega Evolve with your Rayquaza, and the Mega Evolution will reset the weather to make it air in the end, so you can Dragon Ascent the Crest, you can Origin Pulse, which I think 9 or 8 times out of 10 will get rid of the Cresselia, and if they don't protect the Groudon, it just wipes them out. It works pretty well. I will say this though, if you see a Groudon Cresselia, look out for the skill swap play, because that can be very devastating, since it will reset the weather again. It's just a little tech that you need to look out for. It is a possibility. You don't see it much, but it can happen. What else is on my roster? The Smeargle again. Now, I hate playing against Smeargle because it was just all RNG dependent, and I unfortunately got the worst luck in trying to deal with it. And no Dark Void missed in any match that I played. That was the biggest thing. I also had one... Yeah, I looked it up. I had one turn 1 wake up. Everything else was a turn 2, and the majority of those still were turn 3 wake ups. And by that point, people were so far ahead, I just didn't have a response. People higher up the ladder tend to use Spiky Shield because it blocks Taunt. So I have another Pokemon on this list that I want to talk about that was a threat. That's also something that I'm going to bring in because I think it can be very powerful against these guys. But I'll get to that later. But yeah, most Smeargle sets on the Dark Void, the Spiky Shield, that one with Sheer Cold just really ticked me off. Because it actually hit. And I just had nothing. Like, I was gone, man. Oh, that game was just done after that. So, props to that person for at least trying to make a winnable situation out of something that they might have they could have very well lost. But yeah, the biggest thing is just trying to get past that Dark Void. And I haven't quite figured out a good response for it yet. Since so many of them are Focus Sash, a dual hit play is great if you can get one off, but they often come with support of Fake Out, so you have to protect. If it's, you know, a Talonflame is their lead, you can't priority them out. You have to have something that's just rawly faster, and then you still get hit by the Brave Bird if they see it coming. There were so many different meta picks that needed to go on with it that I really struggled in almost every Smeargle matchup, but that's something that's just going to come with time, I think, for every player. Lastly, Xerneas. I still don't have a good answer to this thing, and I'm looking into them. The best I could come up with while I was playing the team was to just beat the crap out of it with everything I had. So playing the Dragon Ascent on it, even though I might lose the speed, or going after it with my Kyogre, trying to pick it off with the Aegislash never worked like I wanted. So all in all, I don't have anything new to say about this thing except it's everywhere and it's crushing, and I really we all as players really need to figure out the best way to deal with it. I don't think playing another Xerneas to counter a Xerneas is really going to win. I think you need something like a Metagross. You gotta double up into it. I loved getting the taunt off when I did, because at least it meant that I could get some free damage on it, and the ascent into extreme speed off my Mega Rayquaza, despite being kind of risky, it worked most of the time. So that's food for thought. If anyone's got any cooler ideas than that, hit me up, let me know. And the last thing on my list that was, oh, it's not in here. Anyway, the last thing that was on my roster is Liepard. And Liepard I put on here because it was kind of the surprise play that really seemed to mess up everything I was doing. Most of them ran Encore alongside their Fake Outs and had Taunt and Foul Play, which did immense amounts of damage even to things like my Kyogre, because despite having all of my special stat investment and trying to minimize that with, you know, a lower attack stat, it still was a 2-hit KO. So I'm going to try and implement this now amazing Liepard into the game, because that thing was just boss, man. They did so much work against me. I can only imagine what else they would do, and that is the mystery Pokemon that I was talking about earlier and how to counter Smeargles. Not necessarily with the taunt, but with the Encore, or even just the threat of the Encore I can play off of. That still, however, gets caught by... what is it? That still gets caught by Talonflames, but I think with the Landorus, Talonflames are lesser issue, and I get the rock slide off, and then I get the punish on it, because if I get the rocks, Order of Operations, he would quick guard or tailwind. I would get the rock slide, which would remove that slot. I could encore the smear goal, which would make them rotate, and then you can follow up punish. And that's the worst case scenario, is they're now in their tailwind. You could try to counter it with your own tailwind. You could try to just grind it out, something I really didn't do. But that's because a surprising amount of my Pokemon really didn't protect all that much, because I was too busy trying to make the awkward play to get in my opponent's head and get some extra damage, which never really panned out, so I need to play a little bit more cautiously. But hey, that's what this whole channel is for. So, in conclusion, the International Challenge was kind of a flop for me. I'm hoping that Showdown tournaments, not Showdown, Nugget Bridge tournaments go pretty good. I would love to play in a winter regional, but I don't know if I'll have the money for it. If anyone wants to help me out, feel free to hit me up and say, hey, I got a ride, I'll flip you some cash. But I doubt that's ever going to happen, just because, it's a game. I really don't expect anyone to help me out with that. So, yeah, moving forward, the Ray Ogre Core with a Lando and a Liepard, I think, has an awful lot of potential. I might do a team building session or something like that later. I hope someone learned something from this other than me and my own personal reflections, because that's what this channel is all about, learning how to be better VGC players, or just gamers in general. So take from that what you will. Those are my thoughts. I hope everyone had a good time watching, and I will see everyone tomorrow with some new Hearthstone content. Hopefully not another 0-3 run. So good night, and take care.